what is it going to take for us to actually want to do something that we enjoy truly? I think that is an important question that we all need to honestly ask ourselves and engage ourselves with. For those of you who are watching, my name is Toby. I am 41 years old. I'm just done with my workout, and I train to live an active, self-sufficient and adventurous life. And this is 15 minutes with me in my kitchen, where we talk about all different and other aspects of health and fitness that could be of importance to us. I mind my health and fitness by minding my sleep. I try to get between 7 and 9 hours of sleep in a night. Usually I get to about 7.5 hours of sleep. I mind what I eat. I try to eat within my energy balance, which means that I try to eat around 2200 calories in a day. And I show up for my training and workouts every day, 30 minutes, give or take, where I do some sort of training, whether that is strength conditioning. I am working on something mobility every day, and I think that is the way to try and stay fit and healthy for life. So today's workout, right? And what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about today's workout. We're going to talk about mastery and what I mean when I talk about mastery, when I mention that as a topic. And we're going to talk about one small challenge that we can take on to maybe develop a habit for health and fitness that we otherwise wouldn't develop or make the change for. And so that's what we're going to talk about this morning. So I just did a kettlebell push-up circuit. That means as much as that I set a timer to every minute on the minute, and every minute on the minute I do a different exercise. So I do push-ups, I do a goblet squat, we do overhead presses, we do bent over rows, and then we top it off with some deadlifts. And I repeated that circuit. It's a 6-minute circuit, right? 5 times. And throughout that circuit, then we talk about health and fitness as well, even though it's maybe a little bit harder because obviously I get short of breath while I'm working out. And every day I do a different kind of workout, right? So one day I'll do a kettlebell workout, one day I'll do mobility, I'll do kettlebell workout, mobility, kettlebell workout, mobility. On Sundays I go for a run, and every day after recording this podcast I actually go out for a 30 to 45 minute walk, which I'm also looking forward to. This morning I'm going to go for a 30-minute low intensity jog, so staying in the upper ranges of zone 1, the lower ranges of zone 2 in terms of cardiovascular output, and that should bring me home right before 7 a.m., which means that I can start on breakfast and make sure that everything's ready for the family to start the day. That being said, let's talk about mastery, because I think there are 5 topics when it comes to health and fitness that we need to consider regularly. And you know how this podcast works. On Monday I will talk about sleep, on Tuesday I will talk about food, on Wednesday we'll talk about movement, on Thursday we'll talk about connection, and on Friday we're going to talk about pursuits or mastery, because I think the weekend is also a nice moment to actually kick back and reflect on what the world has to offer and what we can do with some of that spare time that we have. So hey, if that's something you're interested in, you know, stay tuned, hit like. It helps the stream, it helps people discover the stream. Let me know you're watching in chat, either by, you know, showing some support through one of the smileys or emotions, or sending a message my way. And if you have any questions about this topic or about health and fitness or my health and fitness journey in general, then, you know, feel free to just let me know in chat, all right? So, mastery as a topic, all right? Mastery as a topic, I think, is one that we underestimate and don't really spend enough time really considering, at least in our culture. But when I talk about mastery, it's about picking something that we enjoy for the sake of doing, that we have no interest in monetizing or turning into our job, even though some of the skills might be transferable, but it's about the activity and the joy of the activity itself. We might have some innate talent for it, or we might simply enjoy the activity for the sake of doing it. That is a nicely fresh brewed cup of coffee. We might simply enjoy the activity for the sake of doing it, and we want to become better at it. We want to dedicate time to it over the course of a lifetime, just to develop the skill to explore different aspects of it, simply because it is something that we enjoy doing. And I think that is an important thing for us to consider for different reasons. I have these kinds of activities in my life. I've always had these kinds of activities in my life, but I'm the kind of person who is generally quite curious and generally a little bit eager to learn new things. It's also it's not only a superpower in that way, but it's also a weakness, because I will find new things very interesting. It's always very easy to get started because there's a very steep learning curve, but then we have to go through that plateau to get the benefit of more learning and more mastery with these kinds of things. And I think it is important to try new things and to learn which things we actually enjoy and go back to those things and try to incorporate those in our lives. And here's why. When it comes to mastering certain aspects of a hobby, let's take creative writing as one, right? We can all read and write. We're all capable of putting words to paper and to actually picking up a magazine or a book and reading, but to actually craft something that from the beginning to the middle to the end is interesting and compelling to read, to actually make that flow, there are a lot of skills to that craft that need to be learned. And I've spent years of my life trying to learn that. I have no ambition of becoming a published author, at least not at this stage of my life, or actually writing anything that I would like to have published commercially. But the activity itself is incredibly fulfilling. The activity itself is where part of the fun and joy actually is. The learning how structure works, the learning how sentences work, how we can use words and play with words to communicate certain emotions and messages, how we structure a narrative to be interesting for people. Those are all parts of a craft that the only way to learn those is by investing time and effort and actually doing them poorly before we can do them well. And there's satisfaction in that. There is the understanding that there is something that we are good at in that flow. There is the pleasure and joy of learning something new, but also seeing ourselves develop the skill in something that we may or may not have an interest in developing and learning. And that is important for one reason that I think we tend to overlook in the world we live in today. And the reason that is important is that when life gets hard, right? because life's not always easy. Life generally comes with ups and downs, and I think you only really start to come to terms with those ups and downs if you're fortunate to have a happy and well-provided childhood. When you're an adult, some of us figure those things out when we are a bit younger, tragically already, but there's no harm in that because it prepares us for life in a different way. But when life gets hard, when we suffer setbacks, right? Well, setbacks are moments where we reevaluate things. And it is incredibly important, just as it is important to be fit and strong so that we feel and know that we're capable, just as it's important to have friends and communities that we can rely on for support and help. It's important to be able to go back to ourselves and understand what it is that we are good at. Because the trap is that if we are only focused, if our entire identity is tied up in one thing, let's say our work or our grades, right, or the position we have in our team sports, but that is all we identify ourselves around, that is where we get our sense of worth, capacity, utility from, then when something goes wrong there, we get bad grades, we lose our job, we lose a competition, or we perform poorly in a competition, what do we fall back on to understand that we are actually a very capable, competent human being who is able to learn and who is able to perform and do things well, and when we don't do well, that we are able to learn to do better through our mistakes and through our experience. So having something that is completely detached from everything else that we do in life, that is ours entirely, that is our own hobby, our own pursuit, something we want to master simply for the sake of mastering it, is incredibly important for our overall health and well-being. Specifically for the reason that we derive some pleasure and joy from the act itself. It is probably relaxing. It could be knitting, crochet, or drawing, or painting. Usually these things maybe are in a slight creative field. And it is going to help us when the table is turned on us to actually rise up to that occasion and feel like we could do better than we're doing in the moment, because we know that there are things that we are good at that we can fall back on for inspiration and support for ourselves. All right? So if that makes sense, I hope that makes sense. You let me know in the chat. Because for me, there's a couple of things, right? I set out to learn about creative writing is the big one. That is like my hobby that I just enjoy doing. I'll have a notebook I take everywhere, and I will start scribbling the first paragraph of a story idea. And I have tons and tons of those, but other things that I have focused on mastering throughout my life and that I know that I'm good at. For example, kettlebells. Kettlebells are a very specific way of training, and I've spent 1.5 years now trying to learn how to do kettlebells well. I'm nowhere near a master level with kettlebells, but I've mastered the basic techniques. I've followed the trainings and the instruction courses, and I've got myself to a level where I am competent, and that competence keeps growing, and I have a good baseline to develop that from. When I was a teenager, I got my black belt in judo, and I still derive a sense of worth from that, because that black belt, nobody's ever going to take away from me, and I know how hard I worked to get it, and I know how competent I was physically to get that black belt at the time, right? I think that when it comes to health and fitness, by getting the certification for functional personal training and health coaching, I actually built the skill set and the competence in another area of my life that I am very interested in, but that is not just purely for me, that is also for me and my family, for the conversations we're having, is something that I am interested in and that I have gotten more competent in. I am not a doctor, I'm not a personal trainer, I'm not a dietitian, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a health coach or a life coach in general, but I have sufficient knowledge and understanding of the topic now that I can make more sense of the books I'm reading, the vlogs I'm seeing, the posts that I see, to support me in the effort that I want to put into living a long, healthy, and active life. All right. So there are different things that I've done that I feel competent in, and I can fall back on any of those when when the table's turned on me, when life doesn't smile at me, when it's rainy and gloomy outside. Just keep that in mind. One small challenge that we can take on that might help us be fitter and healthier for life. So let's see, we've done the glass of water, we've done the tomatoes, we've done the bedtime, we're taking the stairs every day, hopefully, at least once, right? I would like you to consider reconnecting or connecting with a friend on a regular basis. So pick one day out of the week, and whatever day that is, whatever moment that is, set aside time to call someone, or set aside time to arrange a meetup with someone, whichever it is that works best for you. But the point of the exercise is this, that at least once a week or 52 times a year, you set a reminder in your calendar. You set a moment where you're going to try to connect with one of your friends, and it might not happen in that exact moment, but it might set up the sequence of events that leads to you connecting in the next week or the next month. And every week, I'd like you to initiate that, you being the driving force of that. Don't get caught up in this trap of, if they don't reach out to me, I'm not going to reach out to them. Just try to set up a cadence where you, with some regularity, let's say once a week, because I can count my close friends on the fingers of my hands. I can't even get to 10. So if I reach out to one person every week, that means around every 2 months at least we have a conversation. So that is 6 times a year that we actually talk, plus we'll talk in between probably. I think that's quite a bit, and I think that is enough to support the relationships and the connections. So think about incorporating that small habit into your week at some point. That could be on a Friday, it could be on a Saturday, that could be on a Monday, that could be a morning, could be an evening, could be an afternoon, whatever works for you and the rhythm of life you and your friends have. That's all I have for you today. It's 6:14 a.m. I'm going to head out the front door once I've finished this delicious cup of coffee. Thanks for dropping by, friends. Thanks for saying hi. For those of you who dropped by and are watching, my name is Toby. I am 41 years old and I train to live an active, self-sufficient and adventurous life. I do so by minding my sleep, minding what I eat, showing up for training, spending time with people I love and care about, do things that I enjoy, generally trying to live a stress-free life. In this podcast, I talk about the training that I did today. I always ask people to like the stream and subscribe to my channel. And we pick a topic, either sleep, food, movement, connections, or pursuits mastery to discuss in light of health and fitness. And on the weekend we do some reflecting on life. So if that's something you're interested in, make sure that you turn on the notifications for this podcast as well. Share it with a friend if you find the conversation interesting, and we can continue this conversation. I'm here every day, and I hope that you will be here regularly as well. Remember, we're good just the way we are. We've got to love ourselves before we can move on. It's the person we are today is going to get us to where we want to be tomorrow. And a bit of kindness to ourselves is going to go a long way. And the only way to get anything done, friends, is by showing up and doing the work. So I will see you tomorrow. Take care, friend. And remember, subscribe.